All right, welcome everybody to the comic panel. I'm Cody.
And I'm Taylon.
And I'm Shawinta.
And today we are covering Die, Volume 1, Fantasy Heartbreaker, written by Kieron Gillen, drawn by Stephanie Hans, and lettered by Clayton Cowles. And this is published by Image Comics. So, Die is the basically kind of a brainchild of Kieron Gillen while he was also hanging out with friends at San Diego Comic-Con. He was in the middle of like two of his other projects, one of which was one that we've read for the show, Wicked and Divine.
Hey.
So if you are interested to check out after this episode more of Kieron Gillen's work, be sure to check out our other episode on Wicked and Divine. But yeah, so he was in the middle of those. He was doing, Comic-Con things as it is work when you are a creator at a con. He was very busy, but he was with friends, and they were joking about the Dungeons and Dragons animated cartoon from the 80s. And basically the last episode never got produced, in where there is, quote unquote, real kids, and they go to the Dungeons and Dragons world. But the last episode is them supposed to be getting out of the Dungeons and Dragons world.
Dang.
But that episode never gets made.
So they never got out.
Yeah, that's exactly what Kieron Gillen thought. Yeah, he was just kind of like, he was, even though it was just kind of a jokey conversation among friends, he just kind of kept thinking about it. He was like, oh, wow, story kind of needs to be told. He kept like, just was like a splinter in the mind, as he describes it. That's not his exact words, but, like that.
Okay, gotcha.
And so, yeah, basically that's where this book comes from. It is also influenced by Stephen King's It.
Really?
Yeah, he doesn't talk a lot about, like, exactly, but I can see the influence of the...
Oh yeah, totally. Like,
yeah.
it's getting back together.
Yeah, exactly. Kids being traumatized in their childhood and then having to come back again to finish the job.
Gotcha. You mean It Chapter 2. Gotcha.
Well, no.
I mean, they're
It. Yeah.
I've never read the book.
Yeah, or seen the original movie.
No.
Missing out. Anyway.
I only watched the first latest movie, so It Chapter 1.
Oh, you've only seen it?
I've only seen the first part, so I'm like, I know they get back together.
Right.
Not very compelled to watch it, though.
Okay, and you haven't seen the original movie either. Dang. And I know Jake, who is not with us today, he has read the book and probably watched all of the movies.
Oh.
So. Tisk, yeah. Anyway, though, so yeah, that's kind of the brief history of this book. And yeah, it it follows 5 kids, or wait, six kids. Yeah. Initially that they were teenagers. They all really enjoyed tabletop RPGs. To say it all out there, tabletop role-playing games. And he basically, one of the main characters, what is his name? Ash, thank you. Yeah. I was just blanking on it for a second.
Or Dominic.
Yeah. Ash, his best friend, Saul.
Or Solomon.
Yeah. Basically, for Ash's birthday, makes a new RPG for him. And so they're all going to play together. And it's not very, delved in upon, but it is magic in some way, like actual magic. And so they are sucked into this world that Saul has created.
Mm-hmm.
And
So there's Chuck, kind of the goofy guy,
Chuck.
right? There's Isabel, who was dating Soul at the time, and she was just sort of standoffish person.
And she's
cynical.
a French exchange student, I believe.
Yep.
And then, of course, there's Soul, who I don't feel like we get too much information about, other than like he cares about his friends and wants to make the experience the best for them.
Yeah, and he's kind of like maybe supposed to be the most like easily outcast, kind of. Like they're all outcasts in their social system at school, but he's probably like, seen as the weird kid. I think is like, they don't say that outright, but that's kind of the impression I got.
But there's Matt, kind of the smart kid, but he's also had a lot of depression because of losing his mother to appendicitis surgery at a younger age. So he's like considered the most depressed, is what like Ash describes him as.
Yeah.
And then there's actually Ash's sister comes to the game too. She like forces him to let her tag along, right? Right, because they just lost their dog or something. So Angela is there. And I think, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. And so they all get sucked into this fantasy world. And we don't really see a lot of their adventures when they first get sucked into this, but they are trapped there for 2 years. And basically they, we just get to see them. They eventually make their way back, but they've accidentally lost Saul. Saul is stuck in there, and they don't have a way to get back. They can't tell anybody in the real world about the game because of a spell that Ash had cast in the fantasy world. And that gets more into like, the plan of the villain of the story, or the
they're not even sure that like Saul is still alive, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like he got left behind when they came back to the regular world,
and
they're like, he must be dead, if he couldn't come back too.
Yeah. That is what they assume. So yeah, they 25 years later, they kind of try to get their lives back together as best they can. Some are more successful than others, like Chuck. He ends up kind of writing a fantasy series of books that's like partially based on their adventures, but not, like, because can't like really say a lot of the details. And Matt is a math teacher, specifically statistics.
Yes.
Yeah, but then one day, a package arrives for Ash at like a hotel desk, I believe.
He was at a bar with Angela, his sister.
It was
who
a
is
bar.
Coder.
Right.
Oh yeah, so Angela lost her arm when they came back.
Yes, that's true.
And so she's a coder, and she makes the joke, the way I'm a coder, I just type really slow. She only has a stump on one side.
Yeah.
She couldn't get a fake arm.
Oh yeah.
I know, right? I'm like.
But yeah, what the package that they receive at the bar is a D20 die that has a blood stain on it. And Ash's first instinct is to just destroy it, but then he gathers the original group together and so that they can kind of decide what they're going to do. And also, before I move on, it should be said that, like, basically each character, each person got one specific number-sided die to, that was going to be the one game piece that they could use for their characters when playing the game, basically, and it represented their power that they had. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of the key mechanic to the game that Soul had designed, and Soul's was the D20. Yeah. And so basically they get back together, and as they're discussing all of this, the D20 just sucks them back into the game. They are now their characters. Ash is now his woman character. I'm trying to remember if they all
he chose to be he chose to be a dictator,
Mm-hmm.
so he can like make people feel a certain way based on just words.
Yeah.
What is it? Angela chose to be a cyberpunk.
Mm-hmm.
I just kept saying, I was like, what does that mean? But basically, she has to get a certain kind of gold or whatever to fuel her powers once a day.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like craving a hit each time. Like she just needs to find it. She needs to find the gold, or else she's powerless.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? Is it Matt is the grief knight?
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
So when he's sad, it fuels his powers. Isabella is a god tamer. She's an atheist, and she has gods as pet.
Mm-hmm.
And so they give her stuff, but in return she always has to make some sort of like promise and sacrifice.
Yeah.
And
Chuck is the fool.
Yeah, he's really a high luck. If he believes he could do it, he usually survives.
Mm-hmm.
Even if everybody else wouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah, and then Soul is the master. And yeah, so they return to this world, and they're kind of like, first of all met with their their mistakes a little bit, Ash in particular. A wandering knight, basically. He was like essentially an NPC character would be. And when they were children and they were there, the knight had kind of fallen in love with Ash, and he dared Ash to put a spell on him that he would not rest until he saw Ash again. And Ash conceded and put that actual spell on him. So now he is back, and he has like
he's dead, but he's rotted.
Yeah.
And kept going.
Yeah, exactly. He can't rest. So, and his eyes are completely rotted out. So even though Ash is there, he still can't rest because he can't literally see Ash.
Oof.
Also,
That's
like,
messed up.
Yeah.
so the general rules of the world, right? It seems like, so there's the Fallen, which seems like a general curse, like bad guys, rotting zombie kind of things that come after you. They're evil. As they say, they're like orcs, a term meaning that they're, you don't have to feel bad killing them.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then it seems like a lot of the NPCs are based on people that were in these, when they were kids, real life. So, like the vague idea of of a crush they had on a girl will end up being like the elf queen.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so basically, I'm blanking on the god binder's name.
Isabella?
Isabella, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Isabella, she has to make a deal immediately, pretty much, to restore the eyesight of the knight so that, he can see Ash and finally rest. Yeah. And then
This just like spills all over.
yeah, definitely. It just spills viscera and gore on Ash until he's gone. Yeah. And then they are approached by that elf queen. That you mentioned earlier, she went to yeah, and Chuck just kind of decides to immediately kill her, and it turns out that she is one of the fallen, actually. And so yeah, they're like basically surrounded by fallen. And that kind of like, it basically shows off how all of their powers work, It's a very just one of those scenes where it's like, okay, everybody has to battle, and this is how everybody's thing works. Yeah.
And his excuse was, oh yeah, no way is the elf queen going to get with me.
Yeah, right.
It's like clearly fake.
Yeah. Chuck just kind of calls the elf queen's bluff. That she's not actually the elf queen. Yeah. Oh, I guess that happened before the night. I see. Yeah. My bad, but kind of the same. Yeah, and they have an encounter with Saul too.
Yeah. At the end of the first issue.
Yeah. Basically, he
gets the die back and then just like places it in his eye socket.
Mm-hmm.
And so, signifying he went full crazy.
Yeah. Right.
What is it? In order to get home, they had to all the players had to agree that they wanted to go home. And so as they were all doing that, the what was he called? Is it the Game Master or something?
Yeah,
like the villain of the world at the time grabbed onto Soul.
Mm-hmm.
And so Soul wasn't able to go back with them. And now they've come back, and it seems that the Game Master tried to break Soul, and Soul's like, but I've replaced him now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the Game Master now.
Yeah.
Or Grandmaster, that was the name.
Grandmaster.
Yeah, and so now he has two different dies. Because I think he initially had the 12-sided one, and the Grandmaster had the 20-sided.
No, he had the 20.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Then, okay, I don't know, but yeah, he has two now. I don't know which ones, but yeah, and he keeps both of them behind his eyes. Or where his eyes would have been, because he is blinded. Yeah, and yeah, basically he's Saul has said, like, I brought you back here so that you could finish playing my game, and then like you get to defeat me, like, yeah, that's basically kind of it. And so they kind of have to make a plan, like, okay, how are we going to do this? And Saul can just, disappear, teleport. He's the most powerful player, so he just kind of goes away.
And he can make up the rules.
Yeah. Yeah, he can also make up the rules. He is literally a game master, for a tabletop RPG. So yeah, after the incident with the NPC knight, they decide not to go the way that they had gone before, where they had made all of their friends, because they're kind of basically like, yeah, it's going to be worse to see all of the people that we knew than to go
after this many years.
Yeah. So they decide to go through an active war zone instead. Yeah, and it's just like, it's kind of just a forever war between these two groups. And Ash has an encounter with, like, some dying soldiers. They get
it's a big Lord of the Rings reference, right?
Oh, is it?
I guess I see that.
With Tolkien literally walking in with the pipe.
Oh.
Right. Yep, that was
He's
him.
like, yeah, I based my Lord of the Rings on, like, real, soldiers dying because World War I happened, and it really messed me up.
Yeah, okay. I definitely got like the eagle reference from Lord of the Rings and stuff, but I did not realize that was just
You didn't
Tolkien.
realize that Tolkien walked in and said, "Yes, I did write my book about this. The curtains are blue."
Ah, wow. Yeah, I didn't.
What cued me was the fact that Ash says to this dude, "I always like the Hobbit chapters best." I was like,
Okay.
"Oh."
Yeah, okay. I missed a lot of that, and now it makes a lot more sense. I kind of thought that was just Saul popping up again. Actually,
I mean,
that makes sense.
I think the soldier like playing with the ring. I was like, "Oh, Frodo?" Question mark.
Precious.
I
can see that.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense too. Yeah. That reference was lost on me, but I'm not a big Lord of the Rings person, so I guess that yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, that's cool though. I just missed it.
No, it's okay. It's like it's vague enough where I was like, I feel like I'm being gaslit by myself.
It's not being gaslit. It's just being wrong.
No. You're totally.
I was right.
Yeah, you're totally right. Yeah. Yeah.
I kept telling myself they wouldn't do that. It's kind of random, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they're doing it right before my eyes.
Yeah. And then basically, yeah, so Ash is very, upset by this encounter. She does have Matt kill the dragon by, using his, like, basically Ash can force Matt to feel sad with her words, and then Matt, can be any level of, like, strong, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Matt's literally like,
he gets.
Yeah.
Huh?
The sadder he gets, the stronger he gets.
Yeah.
And the thing is, when Matt first comes into this place, he's like, all I wanted to be was not the kid I was.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, and now I am, I'm an adult, I have a family, I'm happy. I don't want to be sad again. That's why he had trouble getting sad again to use his powers at first.
Yeah.
I missed that.
Mm-hmm.
I got you.
Yeah.
I mean, he claims he's all better, but of course it's like, there's still, an inner sadness somewhere there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and his sword also helps, or well, it doesn't help. It basically for each time that he uses his sword that feeds off of his sadness, it actually talks back to him and repeats something that he like fears, like an internal thought kind of thing.
Yeah.
About himself. But yeah. So after the war zone, they kind of make it out of there after Matt kills the dragon that's there. And they come to this giant city in a glass dome. Initially, it was just a glass bubble, but now it has been constructed into a glass D20, basically.
It's literally called Glass Town, right?
Yeah, it's called Glass Town. And, there's a giant statue of Saul there.
In the Grand Master
right.
garb.
Mm-hmm. And, so they're very like, okay, we need to go here, but we're like, not sure how it's gonna go. But yeah, they go to the entrance, and it turns out they realize that they're all what they consider the paragons.
The heroes.
The heroes, yeah. And so there's like a big, celebration that they're there. They get like, top treatment basically for being there. Which is good because some of them need help after fighting.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Isabella needs to repay her debts by going to like a deity shrine or something, right?
Yeah.
Whatever, his temples.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And so yeah, they get to take a little bit of a break at an inn, but Isabel does have to, in order to repay her debt, she has to speak in front of, basically a congregation of this particular deity. But what she has to read in front of them is her personal diary from when she was a kid.
Sheesh.
Which is a lot of vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then meanwhile, they make some friends with some dwarves at an inn, and they all have to tell like personal stories to, Matt tells the story of when, his daughter, one of his daughters, has appendicitis, and so he's very worried post, his mother dying from surgery complications. But he couldn't let that fear show so that his daughter wasn't afraid also. Because then that would be like the last thing that she felt, basically, was afraid. And yeah, also there's a pretty not even horrific, but just a really dour tale that one of the dwarves tells of a man he knew who the Grandmaster, like basically they got on the Grandmaster's bad side, and he made every time that he used magic, he lost some of his memory.
Oh, yeah.
And then he turned his children into hydras, and then like basically like took the children and put them somewhere. And so like the dwarf had to keep on using magic to get to the hydras, and he kept on losing memories, just different random ones, until he finally got there, and he had to unlock the magic cage so that he could get to the hydras. And by then he had forgotten that his children had been turned into hydras, and so he slayed his own children and didn't learn until he came back into town, and his friends told him what he'd done. So yeah, and then he, following that, plucked out his own eyes, which is a theme.
Yep.
Yeah. And, yeah. Ash is, like, kind of, they're like, hey, why don't you tell us about, like, why, you're so comfortable living as a girl? Like, you never talked about that, but when you went back to the real world, you're still, like, a guy. What's that about? And Ash doesn't want to answer that.
I mean, Ash's general thing was just the chance to be free, be something I'm not, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
But he wasn't willing to say that out loud.
Yeah.
And he was kind of like, because I don't think they'll get it.
Right.
I don't have too much of an explanation.
Yeah. But yeah, then his sister kind of also like comes up, and she feels like a lot of guilt and stuff. For like,
well, she doesn't want to use she doesn't want to use her one power also, right? Because it'll bring back her little dog companion.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, after having lost their dog right before starting the game.
Oh,
right.
I did not make that connection.
Yeah, I didn't make that connection either. Oh, I thought they were just talking about, like, the dog dies, but he can always be brought back with the gold. But yeah.
So I think the part that's upsetting to her is the idea that once again she'll have to leave this dog when the game ends.
Yeah. That's such a good point. Yeah. Man. Yeah, and then basically they kind of decide that the way that they're going to have to get to the Grandmaster is that they're going to have to destroy Glasstown.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of come to this conclusion because it's like, the leader of the city, I don't remember what his title is, he basically is like, oh, you'll have to do this, there's like 3 keys and, this many...
Basically railroading.
Yeah.
Forcing them to go down a certain path and do a certain list of tasks in order to, like, do it. And they're like, no, this is a waste of time.
Yeah.
And he knows it.
Yeah, and it'll take so long, we'll be gone from our lives again.
So I actually want to paint it like this, right? So as a DM, you come up with the way that you want the story to be told. You're like, you find these 3 keys, and then you have it all mapped out, and then the people, your teammates are like, no, we're not going with that story. Screw that.
Yeah.
The magic of, like, DMing, though, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
When
yeah.
things change
Mhm.
and become new.
Yeah, and that's kind of
Otherwise, you might as well just, like, make a video game and
right.
Fair.
Right.
walk out of the room.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah, and that's kind of like, it is like the best way to do that is to, even in video games, it's like it's all about the illusion of choice too,
Yeah.
D&D gives a little bit more real choice, but ultimately, you are bound by your own imagination. If you only came up with a certain amount of ideas, you're like, okay. You kind of have to loop them back a little bit usually, but without making it feel like railroading.
Yeah.
But they kind of say that Saul was never very good at that, He was just always like, no, you have to follow my plan. Like,
Well, I mean, more like, he's more, I want it this way.
mm-hmm.
But it says later that he can, he in a pinch, he can improvise.
Right, yeah. I mean, you can't you have to be able to improvise as a DM, otherwise you're really like the whole illusion kind of breaks down. You're like,
no, you can't. No.
Yeah.
So yeah, what is it? They're gonna go against everything, like being heroes, and they're going to destroy Glasstown to get Soul's attention, because it looks like he spent a lot of work on this, putting up a statue of himself in there.
Yeah. And they're like, yeah, if we just kill him, then, all we have to do is we have to agree that we're ready to go home.
Yeah. Do they include Saul in that? Or is it just...
No, that's the point. You kill him so that he can't agree.
Right.
Or it doesn't matter.
I don't know if they came to that conclusion yet, but they just want to get his attention first and bring him here.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Maybe I was already on that page, as far as that's the only way. But yeah, so they kind of like implement this plan. They, they're able to send not Angela, or is it Angela?
Yeah.
Yeah. They send her to this like
bunker, or well, not a bunker, but
yeah, it's the Eternal Prussia.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, where like basically it's kind of like where enemies are spawned from, basically. Like it's a deep part of the game where it's kind of like a video game almost, where it's like, okay, this is where things come from.
It's like also too they're robots.
Yeah. And she like basically is able to kind of hack into that system and spawn a bunch of enemies going towards Glasstown. And then meanwhile, Ash goes and talks to the city leader and gets him like alone, basically, so that she can use his power or her powers against him after like gaining a lot of his trust, and learns how to.
I mean, just like mind, it's brainwashing.
Yeah.
Like you can win them over and have them feel affectionate towards you using your words, but they'll always remember it, and once it wears off, they will never ever trust you again.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, she does that, learns how to break down the defenses of Glasstown, and, so they implement that. They bring down the defenses, and then, not Isabella. Yeah, Isabella, makes a deal with, or actually, no, I mean, technically it is a deal, but actually the god that she talks to Skywatcher ends up owing her. And yeah.
Well, she pretends like she tips him off that, like, oh man, the rich are just gonna crush this lower class. Look at all these people in Glasstown.
Mm-hmm.
They're just getting caught up in this endless war. And he's like, how dare they? I will save these people,
Yeah.
from being crushed under the boot.
Exactly. So yeah,
it's like, thanks for telling me, Isabella.
Yeah, so she's able to, with the Skywatcher's powers, open a portal that will take the townspeople to safety. And all the townspeople are like, you're a messiah, you saved us, and that makes her very uncomfortable. But yeah, then Mistress Woe is all like, hey, you owe me right now, actually. And I don't remember what the price ends up being for that.
I don't know either.
Yeah, I think it just causes like kind of even more bad luck to happen. But yeah, Soul, like basically the dragons come, that have been sent, and all of the like, military power, and destroy Glasstown pretty easily, like almost instantly. And so Saul comes down and is like, all right, you got my attention, and he uses his his game master powers against the group. They like slow down. Ash can't use her powers in Glasstown. But she is able to get in close and then use basically like, an ability that's just like, she can kind of punch through. Like she says that it's just like a dagger pretty much. But it's her hand.
Mm-hmm.
And so she kills Saul. And everybody is really shocked by that action. But they're like, okay, we can go home now. Like, yeah, it's kind of messed up, but we'll deal with it when we're in the real world. Like, let's get out.
Mm-hmm. But good old Chuck.
Yeah. Chuck said, like, they're each all like, okay, they each have to say, the game is over, and then Chuck almost says it, and is like, actually, no. Like, I can do so much in this world. Like, like, my life isn't even that bad in the real world, but, like, yeah, who cares? Like, I want to stay here.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, basically, Isabella, feels the same way once Chuck kind of talks about it. And so they join forces. She calls on the Skywatcher for her favor, and they go somewhere else. Meanwhile, Saul starts standing back up, and he is one of the Fallen now. It turns out that all of the Fallen are actually real people who have died in this world. And so they're like kind of like zombies.
Aren't they real people who died in the real world?
Oh, is that what it is? I thought
I thought that's why it's more messed up.
Yeah.
No, it's everyone who came here from our world. So like they died in the game.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's basically the end of the story. They have to find out how they're going to
Well, that's the end of these 5 issues.
Yeah, the end of these 5 issues. Yeah, sorry. Not the end of the entire story.
The end of the story.
Yeah. But the end of the first volume, they are stuck kind of having to find out what they're going to do now.
Mm-hmm.
They split up.
The party has ended.
Yeah. Yeah, they split the party. That's a big no-no.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's kind of what happens in Die Volume 1, Fantasy Heartbreaker. I personally really enjoyed this the story.
Same.
I was
For what reasons?
Well, yeah, so I was kind of surprised a little bit just because I didn't really enjoy the other work that we covered by Gillen, Wicked and Divine. I felt like, it was like some interesting magical world building, like, urban fantasy kind of stuff. But at the same time, it felt like we didn't know enough about the characters and we couldn't really get like very well attached to them. It was just kind of like, these people, I just don't, I just don't mesh with them, especially like the main character. She was the only one that was like, not a god, basically.
Forgotten she existed already.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember that comic at all.
Okay.
I remember the gods, but I don't remember her.
Yeah. And then the gods were just like, yeah, they were a cool concept, but they were kind of boring, to me anyway. But yeah, this one, all of the characters are, I'd say like really complex and deep. It's like they have a lot of stuff going on, a lot of different like competing motivations, even within themselves, and then add in their competing motivations between each other.
Right.
And I just think, it's a really fun concept. The world of tabletop RPG, kind of not being too much of like too referential in a way where it's all like, hey, isn't this like fun, that we're it's like, I mean, even they're a little bit like tired of any of the references, the common tropes. They're like, oh my gosh. So yeah, that's like, I guess
it's funny because there is a narrator in here that's like talking to the audience.
Is there?
Yeah, it's Ash.
Or yeah, I mean Ash is
constantly talks.
Yeah. Okay, I thought you meant like an omniscient narrator or something.
Oh, no,
I was like, what? Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so that's what I really enjoyed, was just like, the characters, but I mean also like the plot really surprised me too. I was like, the beginning was like, just enough exposition, I think, and then it was like, okay, we're rolling, we're doing like a lot of different things, than what I would initially expect. And then like at the ending where they almost go home.
Yeah.
It was just like, whoa, okay. like I just thought like maybe, I think I was invested enough that I was not thinking about how I thought it might end, considering I knew that there was more volumes to this story. But if I had to like guess, I would have said like, oh, you killed Saul, but that wasn't like enough, But yeah, no, they really could have gone home. Like they were right there. And then Chuck and Isabella are like, yeah, no, I don't want to. My life in the real world is not good enough. Yeah.
One of my favorite authors on who has a YouTube channel and kind of like gives tips on how to write stories is says that a story is not the events that take place, it's how they affect the characters. Like, what does it mean to the characters? And so for me, I think this comic did a very good job of showing what this story means to these characters.
Yeah.
And so like you're saying, like characterization and the stakes. I mean, that was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
I liked the concepts of the character classes.
Yeah.
Grief Knight, Dictator, like getting to see those, it explained and seeing them in action. That was fun. I really I think the most, of course, Isabel's one, where it's like, because I was like, oh, is she just going to be pulling out like constantly new gods? But like she has a few of them and they have certain powers they can give her. Like when she needs to be healed, most of them can't really do that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's one, and depending on what kind of god that is, you're gonna have like a certain set of like normal prices,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like giving your characters weaknesses. Just like, and being creative with it too.
Yeah. I really like that too, and yeah, the creativity, and like I really liked the idea, of what each die that they had represented, and like how it represented it. Yeah, it was just like a really kind of intriguing system, like it's like it helped to add even more characterization to them, I feel like. Yeah, and I was reading a little bit of Kieron Gillen talking about, sometimes it was like, oh yeah, this just makes sense for this die to like match up to this power kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes it was like, okay, I have to work backwards. Where I'm like, okay, so we have to have something for this one, and like he was talking, I think, about the D4 four-sided die, and he was thinking about it just like maybe being like for a fighter or something, and like the pointiness of a D4 and like stepping on it at first, and then he was like, that's kind of boring.
Yeah.
So yeah, I appreciate the thought behind it and stuff like that.
Yeah. Was that in the little essays in the book?
Yeah. Each issue, if you bought it issue by issue, there is a short essay in the back, and then if you buy the trade paperback, the essays are collected in the back of the book. Yeah, I read that. Yeah.
I enjoy. Oh, did you have
no, you go.
I enjoy speaking of the essays, I enjoyed the little like, oh hey, there's actually an RPG here that you can get to play essentially this story, but
right, yeah, it is you can make up whatever you want kind of, but yeah, they have a rule set for Die the game, which yeah, I thought that was pretty cool too. I am interested to check that out a little bit and see how it plays, I guess. The artwork was really pretty too. I think I also saw in some back material that Stephanie Hart, or Hans, thank you. Stephanie Hans had pretty much she did a lot of covers, and that's what Kieron Gillen just thought, that's what she did, was cover work for and then she did one issue of Journey into Mystery where she'd done the covers only for that series. And then he was like, hey, we need to work together. I really want to work with you.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's just a really cool style, I think, of just this, like, I don't know how to decide, like, how to talk about it entirely.
Yeah. I kind of looked at it as, like, it's closer to the realistic, like, photorealism, but then there's, like, a ghostliness to it.
Yeah.
It's a painterly surrealist style almost.
Surreal. I think that's better.
Yeah. I really like that. Painterly surreal even.
Mm.
Yeah. Especially on the backgrounds. Like, you know, she makes sure that she keeps strong figures, but then, like, anything else in the environment, you know, has that, surreal and just, like, you know, almost, like, blotchy, fadey, you know, look to it. Although, yeah, she does show in some of the flashback scenes even that she, you know, will put in, like, a more standard, sharp looking for everything. You know, it looks more like a storybook kind of.
I liked those flashbacks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nah, so I was at the comic shop just randomly picking out stuff, and I saw this comic, and I just looked at the art, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm buying this.
Yeah.
And so
it is really cool. And I also have to appreciate the covers, even though, you know, we're reading this and the covers don't show up until the back, except for obviously the cover on the front of the book. But I really like that it's like the pattern that is on top of each of the covers is the unfolded version of a particular die.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. I just didn't know what die was.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't really, you know, that's the thing too. It's like until you fold it up, it's a little unclear what this is. Like, I mean, I guess you could count the faces, you know. But...
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah, it's kind of fun, you know. Just having all of those little bits. Yeah, and I don't know. I just think that that's it's all very fun, but also like so shocking too. Like I think the reason that I skipped some bits on accident in the beginning of the summary and jumped straight to the night with the worms in his eyes was because that was like such an evocative image, but also an evocative like story element too, where I was just like, oh my god, like that's awful. Like, yeah, something I didn't mention too is that they the players they agreed when they were teenagers too that basically to treat all of the other characters that they meet as real. You know, they can't tell how real this world is, so it's better to just assume, you know, don't just like hack and slash them if you don't have to, because you don't really know, you know, it seems like they think and feel just like anybody. And so, yeah, that's why, you know, they make sure part of their plan is to, you know, get the people out of Glasstown, you know, like they didn't have to do that technically, but they were like, okay, yeah, it makes sense to spare them. Yeah.
I'm just thinking about, like, you know, what, 15 to 17-year-olds being like, I was just like, that's really smart.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, on the one hand, it's like, it's almost surprising that they thought of that. But on the other hand, it's like when you are in a body that feels like yours, it's like, okay, well, this is my world. You know, it's like, I'm going to treat you look like a real person. You feel like a real person. You know, I'm going to treat you like a real person, you know, because I feel like I am in the real world to me right now. Gotcha.
I mean, you know, it's not Westworld.
Right, yeah.
I mean, Angela lost her arm.
Yeah.
You know, she has a cybernetic arm as her cyberpunk character, and she knows in her regular life she does not have an arm there.
Yeah.
That's got it. That's among other things messed up.
That'll mess with you.
That'll mess with you. You're like, I can go home. Oh man, I'll have I lost an arm, but I can go home and get it back. And you go home and you didn't get it back. You're like, oh.
Yeah.
That's rough.
Yeah, you do have to kind of wonder, like, did the cybernetic arm come as a choice? Like, hey, you can get this as, like, an upgrade. Or did it come as, like, yeah, somebody cut off your arm, so, here. You can, like, you can buy this as, we have this prosthetic technology, especially with the class you play,
So my interpretation of how she lost her arm was that she lost it when they were trying to get home.
Oh,
did you guys get that?
That I think I do remember that. I just forgot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess it doesn't even work out quite like that. Where
right.
It's like, but
Yeah, I mean, yeah, she did still lose it in game though. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it would be almost like, if it was a choice though.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a game. Yeah. I honestly, I wouldn't call, anything perfect, but there's not a lot that really bothered me in this.
I didn't love the token thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe if I had more...
It was just like, why are we doing this? Okay, the majority of the story feels a lot like kind of wandering at first. That's why I really like when they come up with a plan, or like, we're going to destroy Glasstown. Like, I think that last section's really good. A lot of the middle section, I feel like even the dialogue really annoyed me, because I felt like sometimes they just were saying things so that each character has something to say, rather than like something that told me about that character. A lot of times it really works when they're like one-on-one though. Like, I think Matt, Ash talking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. I agree. That is my favorite, like, kind of relationship. And like, I'd even be interested to see, like, in next volume, obviously you're going to have to get some one-on-one between Chuck and Isabella. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, like, let's see more of that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I definitely agree. Matt and Ash's relationship was kind of my favorite. But yeah, I can see what you're saying about like kind of a little bit of meandering in the beginning.
They're like, they come across the night. They're just sort of, see, I don't love the fact that the backgrounds are painterly. I felt like a lot of times it made me not sure where they are or why, like, things will just happen in an area because we need the thing to happen, rather than like, this happened because we're in the ruins or something. So it very much feels like an RPG that someone's telling. The majority of the book to me felt like somebody recounting a really cool dream they had, and like, you're like, yeah, I kind of get that that's cool, but also I'm not really. It's really fuzzy to me. Gotcha. So that's why I really like the classes. The characters themselves were really... I didn't like when Chuck was like, I admit I was a bad first boyfriend or something. When Angela's like, you were the worst first boyfriend. And Chuck admits that. And like, Ash is like, wow, character growth. And I'm like, but why? Is it character growth, or is he just... I don't know. I'd like to have seen a little bit more of like the build up to Chuck, being like, I don't want to go back. Because I didn't feel like it was foreshadowed that much. I think Isabella, like, it was kind of foreshadowed, but it was pretty quick. Like, it was the ending sections, right? It wasn't really happening before that. Like, I get that, lying to the people bothered her. And like, she does want to treat them as real people, and she gets the sense that she's hurting them. Which, like, Ash did too, with, like, playing as the dictator role, right? And the town leader.
Yeah.
But Ash is able to get over it very quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of got the sense that there's a little bit less, like, more like, kind of sucks, but, it is what it is kind of thing. From Ash.
Yeah, a bit. It's like...
Ash is willing to kill a soul.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like anything to get out of here.
Yeah.
And Ash is like, well, Soul was kind of already dead already for years and years to us. And he's like, but was he?
No. Yeah.
I think, yeah, so I really like Soul being like, Ash, I made this all for you.
Mm-hmm.
And like that, I really like that part. And so, of course, Soul seems very intriguing to me. I don't know, like, it's so hard because it shoves them right back in because you have to do that in the first issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have to get back into it. But a lot of the time they spend time talking about, like, their past lives. Oh, man, I gotta get back to my kids. And, like, they just throw names at us in that beginning, right? Like, Isabella, or not Isabella, God, Angela was with so-and-so, and then was with so-and-so, and so-and-so won't take her back. And now she has to fight for custody of her kids.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay. We have summarized Angela's thing, I guess. And, like, she's sort of upset about, like, I need to get back to my kids. We're gonna lose custody.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna lose custody of them.
Yeah.
But I don't know, when it doesn't manifest a ton in, like, stuff she does. I don't know if Angela does too much other than, like, get upset about Dog at one point.
Yeah, well, no, she
stands up for Ash. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and also there's, like, in general, kind of her whole, like, you know, addiction element to her.
Which, like, is
powers.
that referencing a real thing that she has? Like, that would be interesting to me.
Yeah. And that's something, you know, I'm glad that, like, a lot of these things that you're bringing up did remind me, actually, that it's like, the thing is that a lot of the story focuses mostly on Ash. I mean, Ash is our, you know, point of view character, basically. Mm-hmm. And so, like, you know, that's not a bad thing, but we don't get a lot of insight past their perspective, you know? Yeah,
it was a little annoying to have the monologue about things where I was like, because I felt like sometimes the art didn't match up with, like, what they were saying. Just a tiny bit, like, reactions and stuff and what they're talking about. So I had to rely a lot on, like, Ash's interpretation of, like, oh, so-and-so's mad about this because their past trauma of something. And, like, Ash would explain it in the text.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be like, okay, I get what's going on. The art did not feel like it communicated that enough. So, I don't know, it felt like it leaned on writing a little bit. I was like, this would probably be really interesting as a book.
Interesting.
See, I don't know. I like the art, but I don't know if I like the art for this. I don't know. Painterly styles are always hard for me anyway. Like the faces are sometimes a little bit off, and, like, you have to spend so much time trying to render it, but it's a little unfinished kind of rendering because you want it to be surreal.
Yeah, I kind of get that. I'm not gonna, you know, my opinion stays that I still really like it, but yeah, it's like, you know, like I was saying before, she primarily did cover artwork, you know, so doing sequential stuff, you know, just, you don't have as much of that, like, practice, you know, putting in the hours of, like, you know, like you're saying, you know, just having...
There's almost, like, cool imagery, and sometimes but it's not sometimes communicating the story properly. Like, that's a really cool scene. What does it mean? Because, yeah, it is very much cover image style. That's perfect for cover images, right? Like, that's cool. I want to read the comic and learn about the actual story now.
Yeah.
Those last few images of Soul, pretty cool, though. Pretty darn cool.
Oh, yeah, where he,
like,
turns
dead.
Into a fallen or whatever.
Yeah, I like those. So, yeah, I think the beginning of it, I was like, oh, God. The middle, I was like, oh, God, Tolkien. Like, why are we referencing... I don't know, it's just like... It's like if we had some sort of clown story, and then, like, Stephen King walked in. He's like, by the way, this is what it's about. Like, my story. And you're like, oh, what a coincidence.
What?
Stephen King.
Isn't it also the case that Dungeons and Dragons is inspired by Tolkien?
Yeah, it is basically.
For sure.
You know, they had to, like, change hobbits into halflings, in order to really like make sure that it was like, okay, we're talking about something different here.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I wonder if I would have been like more okay with it if it happened later in the story, like, you know, a later chapter versus like the god of the RPGs comes down from the heaven, like second chapter.
Right, yeah. Man, it's so hard for me to judge it because, like I was saying, when you pointed it out, I just did not realize that that's what it was supposed to be going on. So I'm just kind of like, I don't know how I feel about that yet, you know? Like, I'm just like, yeah. Like, on the one hand, it totally does feel like the kind of thing that a teenager would put into their RPG that they had just made for their friend who is a big fan of RPGs.
True.
It's just like, hey, did you get the reference? Did you see? You see what I did there?
The man with the
Yeah.
Isn't that fun? We know we get the reference. Yeah, so, but at the same time, it's not played that way, though, because they're adults, and it's like, yeah, okay, we get the reference, yeah. Yeah, and it's supposed to be a very serious scene with, like, you know, people dying in war and stuff like that.
Yeah. That was an interesting...
I don't know, I just think of the meme of, like, Beyonce? Like...
I am not familiar with that meme, I think.
There's a surprised face, like, can't believe it's Beyonce. But in this case, Tolkien? In my game? God. It felt a little silly to me.
Okay, yeah.
So I didn't like the middle. Intro, I was like trying. There's just so much information.
Yeah, no, it really is.
And there's no room to like show most of it, which is why I feel bad saying like I want to get a sense of who they are.
No, for sure. I mean, that's one thing where I feel like, you know, and kind of what I was getting at a little bit with like talking about Ash being our POV is that like easily I think that the characters are strong enough, you know, just like in what is presented to us, that they could, you know, lead their own issues, you know, or they could like, you know, get sections where we see their personal lives more. Like we get to see Chuck's house before they go to the fantasy realm. But we hardly see their real adult lives, you know, just for maybe half a page. You know, we kind of get like, oh yeah, this is who this is. Like just to introduce them, basically, how their life has changed.
Just lean on flashbacks, you guys.
Yeah.
Just do it. Like, the moment Isabella starts having to read from her diary, I want her to be, like, flashback to teaching her English class or something. Like, for a moment there.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. And I also, like, yeah, that was something that I'd forgotten to say, too, was that, like, I was a little put off by the choice to not flashback more to their previous experience as teenagers in the world. I was like, I mean, I guess they specifically chose not to interact with the people that they'd met before in the other town. But yeah, I mean, that is obviously a choice, you know, and so it's like, why do you feel like, you know, flashbacks essentially are going to bring the story down? And maybe it's just a matter of like plotting where it's like, okay, I know I at least have these 5 issues and they have to sell before I can, you know, put any more. And so if I put too much background in the 5, then I'm not going to get to the twist where they're still stuck by the end of issue 5. But yeah.
Well, yeah, I thought the story was going to end. I was like, thank goodness. But then the twist was cool.
Yeah.
They're like, Soul's still alive. And he looks horrible. And he's kind of madder.
Yeah.
Awesome. Destroy them.
What would you do if they like found a way to save the fallen? Like assume like somehow bring him back to life. Because actually, Saul hints at that, where he's like, "We found a way as the Fallen to come back to life by killing the players.
Mm.
And so, like...
Okay, so if a Fallen... Yeah, you're right. If a Fallen kills a player, a player then... They just switch places.
Mm.
And yeah, I think... So that was something cool. I definitely did not research this for this episode. I think I saw this like on Twitter way back when this was first coming out.
Mm.
But in the RPG version of this, and I'm sure it'll also come up in the story as well, the Fallen actually, even though they're non-player characters, they get a version of the die system. Like they technically have a die that represents them, and it's actually the coin. They are, 50% odds.
The coin,
like a coin flip.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You either get it or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
I see. I got you.
Yeah.
That's cute.
Huh.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, so that's why they're also binary. They kind of speak in zeros and ones. And...
Oh, did he actually say that? I think he actually said it when he was waking up.
I remember that happening. I thought they were going to be like, computer game or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of a weird, like, why did you say that?
Mm-hmm.
Angela's whole thing of programming was... I have to say, that was dumb. She's bad at programming. That's not how it works. Attacking equal true.
Yeah, okay, that's kind of fair. I kind of glossed over that. I was like, I'm in the action. I'm not thinking about things.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's
honestly same. I was like, yeah, okay. Wasn't even thinking about it.
Yeah, I was like, what happens next? Let's just go.
I'm just the old man yelling at the screen.
But no, yeah, that is kind of like, okay. We'll just, yeah.
Bad programmer.
Or maybe she understands how something would be programmed in a fantasy world where somebody doesn't understand programming very well. Yeah. Like, yes, this is the way that I would do it if I knew nothing, except for like very basic jokes about programming. I don't know. That's just me making more excuses.
She is a cyberpunk.
Yeah.
Yep. Now, I don't know if they would go the route of like we can bring the Fallen back, like, but that would be kind of interesting to me to think. I would
be surprised if they didn't. Like, if there's something you can't bring back, you got to find a way to bring it back, right?
Fair.
Yeah. But also, I'm like, man, is that just like do they get returned back? No, there's no way they'd be returned back to their times because they they lost the 2 years when they were kids, So just like, do you return a bunch of people that maybe like, if there's that many fallen people, that means that they are from different times throughout history. They've lost even more years. Like, are they just going to be time displaced people like from the 50s and from the 1900s and like like all that back, and then they're like, hi, welcome to the 21st century.
Hey, you know what? They need to go through some therapy just like everyone else.
Yeah. So... I guess so. Yeah, that's the fourth volume of Die. Is that it's now it's the fantasy people in the real world.
Oh man, going through like I was thinking of Jumanji.
Oh yeah. This does have a very Jumanji feel too, a little bit. Yeah. Was there more to that?
Well, it's like, so the first Jumanji is like, oh, we're going into the Jumanji world, and then some other version of Jumanji is like the world coming to the real world. Or
you're talking about the newer version where it's like a video game, right?
I think so.
Yeah. I was definitely thinking of the Robin Williams original one. Gotcha. But yeah. That one, the video game one is probably more of a better comparison anyway, since the people who are playing it go into the world of Jumanji. It's not Jumanji coming into the real world.
Right.
But yeah. Yeah, I think that for the most part, kind of, as I said a little bit, like the only thing that I wish for this is, that there could have been a little bit more room to breathe for everything. Mm-hmm. We definitely get characters that's just like, this is their deal, as Shawenta said too, and it's like, we're moving on, keep moving on. Mm-hmm. But, I do have to also appreciate that they keep the pace up. I don't necessarily personally notice that too bad because I'm like, oh, here's a new thing, maybe I have bad attention, where I'm like, okay, I'm ready to be on to the next thing.
Entertain me.
Yeah, entertain me. Continue.
I just think like they had once they actually made a plan, like that's good. But it took them so long to wander into making a plan.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was like their plan was, we're here. Okay, I don't want to see anybody I know.
And walk that way.
Yeah, walk that way. And then, that was terrible. And then, this
going to town.
Yeah, going to town. And then we'll try to play the game. Oh no, that's gonna suck. Okay, here's the plan.
Like, I don't know if I necessarily get that feeling of like we're being wandering or like we're wandering because like to
wanders
me
into a trench.
I mean, I don't know. To me, it was like, okay, we just got put here in this area. Like, okay, things are going to be around that. It's like, okay, something went on. Like, we're going there. Like, not the players, but like the things that they interact with, or like, okay, something happened over there. Like, let's go check it out. Like, kind of like.
What do you mean? When did they do that? When did they go?
It wasn't like I'm more mainly speaking in like a metaphorical sense. Like, they were attracted to that presence. To me. So like. They get there.
Get where?
They, the players.
Oh, to the fantasy world.
Get into the fantasy world.
Right.
And so this is a big event. In my mind.
Yeah,
And so then, all these things started approaching.
Oh yeah, the fallen, the elves.
Yeah. So to me, like, I guess I would go even further and saying like, they are here in this place. They're trying to get their bearings. And so, like, any kind of wandering is them, like, trying to readjust. Like, okay, how do we get back into the characters that we have assumed for those 2 years? Like, how do we understand where we are and, like, them collecting all that information?
They can accept that as a story excuse for a scene that was randomly needed.
Gotcha.
Yeah, definitely.
I need to wear the armor because it's cool.
Yeah, that's basically, like, I've realized, like, while talking about this, like, there's multiple things where I'm like, well, this, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that's you coming up with an excuse for a thing that, like, ultimately you like, and I'm speaking as myself, but,
sometimes the armor is so darn cool. It just gives you a billion buffs and you just need to wear it.
Yeah. Yeah, though. I don't know.
I liked it more than I thought I would. So when I came into this episode, I was like, I have nothing to say. I didn't like this at all.
Really?
And then I remembered I liked the ending and I was like, I don't like this, but I want to read more.
Oh, okay.
I don't like, I don't know, I like their classes. I don't know if I care about the characters that much.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm definitely interested in reading more, and I also, I came into starting the book, I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna like this, I just had like, and I don't think it was just Kieron Gillen. I was like, well, I don't even really like fantasy worlds that much, like hard fantasy, Dungeons and Dragons.
Mm.
So I don't know, like this might not
Gotcha.
take me, and then, yeah, but it just worked, I appreciated, like, kind of the, like, it's not, I wouldn't call this horror, to me at least, but it is like a very, like, thrilling, and like just kind of, I don't know what to call it though. It's like dark. It's just dark,
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, it's like a dark fantasy. I don't think it's so thrilling that I'm like it's a thriller, but like nearing that.
Okay, gotcha. I don't even know what the class, like, what is a thriller? I don't even know.
Heavy in suspense.
Okay.
Just like, the stakes are so
Fairbanks.
high and you don't know if things are going to work out,
Gotcha.
Born Identity, or
Yeah.
I love the crime ones.
Mm-hmm.
I was going like more like slasher, like
Yeah, no.
the violins.
I will say, like, I understand what you guys are trying to say. I will say I don't think it's dark fantasy. Caution to actual dark fantasy fans. It's not that dark.
Okay. Fair.
It's a nice little city. They're like, hey guys, come in. Like, we love you. I like dark fantasy, like Dark Souls style environment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
well, yeah, I guess I wouldn't say the environment is not built to be dark, but the story itself, I feel, is dark, is the thing.
Yeah, like,
now that would be a great turn of events if, like, because I understand what you're saying, that, like, there's a very dark side to a lot of their powers that's just beginning to show, possibly. Now, if they turn this story into dark fantasy where the environment begins to reflect that, I would be like on board 100%.
Yeah.
Give me Bloodborne.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, that'd be interesting. I'll have to chew on that description a little bit, and also, I guess, maybe familiarize myself more with dark fantasy. Yeah. But yeah, the trauma, I guess, that the players experience,
Yeah.
It's a little bit more of an adult thing, like
No,
it's not
that to me is like, I'm right with you. Like that, it's like, wow, that's messed up.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. It maybe visceral fantasy, if that works better for you.
I wouldn't try to use labels.
Yeah.
I just say, like, well, to me, dark is like, can I say that something's really messed up?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
messed up though.
It's like,
I feel like we're thinking about different spectrums.
Yeah,
that's probably true.
Yeah.
It's just a little adult. Mental therapy.
Adult fantasy.
I mean, if you take like the kind of stuff that I like, which is like more the entertainment value, like I think of Absolute Carnage, and then, or actually less our Absolute Carnage, I guess, more King. Actually, no, those are bad examples in general.
Yeah.
I can't even.
It's dark fantasy.
like those are dark. I mean, like, but in a different way, I guess.
Yeah.
Like they're not the kind of dark where I'd be like, dang, that's messed up.
Yeah, because they're still ultimately like superhero books.
Yeah.
Good guys, bad guys, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I think you're on the right path of like not trying to label it too hard.
Yeah. I was like, so choosing this book, I was like, oh yeah, it's the art. Like I thought die, and I was like, die, like die.
Like yeah.
I was
danger die.
Yeah, danger. and then reading it was like, oh, this is D&D. Wow, okay, I didn't see that coming.
Okay, yeah.
And so
you
I guess
did the me thing of choosing a book based on its art.
Yeah, which I mean, I judging by
It
the
makes the
success,
experience better.
judging by the success of this book, I should do that all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun.
Because I definitely think with me there's a balance where it's like the art has to be good for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, and I realize like I have kind of like a blanket standard where I don't necessarily take into the account like, oh, is this good? Is this art good for the kind of story that they're telling? Like, to me, I don't know just for that.
Yeah.
I don't know
I
just
think-
for inflation.
Final thoughts on this. If it did different art, I might have liked it more.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Not bad art, doesn't work for this story, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, it was pretty much like, while I can recognize its flaws, it pretty much won on all categories for me. And yeah, I'm really thinking that I'll pick up the next volumes for it. It also helps too that it's not just plain ongoing forever and ever. It ends at volume 3.
Oh, it has ended, or
it has ended. And I think I did see that volume 3 got kind of delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So hopefully that didn't affect the story in any way. But yeah, hopefully that was just distribution of, in writing and all that stuff. I think that it's going to be nice. Like, that means that to me that like there's potential for like the flaws as far as like, getting more into the characters, and like their backgrounds and how they feel about stuff. Like that'll get more fleshed out in the volumes, and it's like it's planned to be,
I gotcha. Well, I like this book, and there are no flaws with it, and yes, I'll read more.
No,
I thought you were going to add, and I will not be disagreed with.
Yeah, no flaws, period. Cool. Yeah, I'm glad everybody, or that two-thirds of us, and
Smashing success.
Yeah.
Percent.
Mm-hmm. And Shuenta, you said you enjoyed parts of it. It just wasn't the whole thing.
Yes,
So,
I did not. Yeah, by the end of it, I was like, okay,
Yeah.
you did okay.
Yeah, and to be fair to it too, even though I've been overly fair to it, it is sometimes it just takes some time to find your feet. Need a couple issues. All right, well, thank you everybody for listening. This has been the Comic Panel. I'm Cody.
I'm Tilon.
And I'm Shuenta.
And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening. If you like this episode, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on Apple Music, Spotify, or Podbean. You can support this podcast by sharing it with anyone you know and by rating and reviewing our podcast. You can also reach out to us with any thoughts you have on the things we talk about on Twitter at TheComicPanel1 and on Instagram and Facebook at TheComicPanel. We appreciate your feedback and look forward to sharing many more comic thoughts with you. Have a blessed day.